Let's get right into this review for Evil Dead Burn. Alright, so Evil Dead Burn is directed by Sebastian Vanecek. This is the latest installment in the Evil Dead series. The lore surrounding these films is essentially about an evil book that can turn people into deadites, which are essentially zombified devils. So now that I've seen the film, what did I think about the cinematic package here? I found this to be a mixed bag with a lot more compounded negatives by the end of the experience. To start with the positives, I love the visuals paired with the film. I think recent Evil Dead films have done a great job to capture the dreaded housescapes and the claustrophobic vibes of not being able to escape away from a deadite. I also found myself enjoying certain segments within the film. One of my favorites was the car sequence, as I just wasn't prepared for everything that would entail in there. It was a fun sequence that caught me off guard in a good way. I also enjoyed the general setup in Act 1. There was enough oddball moments and obscurity to the dreaded scenarios, which actually helped to keep me enticed to see what would happen next. The cast was also pretty solid for the story being told here. Not to get into the negatives, one of my core issues was the lack of depth within this story. There's a lot of plot holes, unexplained phenomena, and a dip into the C or D tier territory for the majority of the film beyond Act 1. The characters are just wasting time in between the acts for their actions, taking way too much damage, and surviving incomprehensible scenarios with the deadites. Like quite literally in Act 1, we get to see the overall power and strength of these demonic beings, yet the characters we follow seemingly have incredible vitality. Also, Act 3 was incredibly dull for me, and I'm surprised it didn't end where I thought it was going to end, and they dragged it on for another 8-minute sequence. All in all, there's just enough absurdity to the core of this experience that boggled and simmered down my satisfaction with the film by the finish line. Sure, the gore elements were great, and there are some intense or fun sequences, but all of that sort of felt forced in this cinematic package without it being naturally introduced. For example, the entire house majority of the film takes place in, I just can't fathom how a newlywed couple kept living in a place filled with mold, rats, and rotten floorboards. Like when we get introduced to the couple's house early on, it just comes off as a haunted house for great horror sequences rather than a place a happy new couple would realistically live in within the story. Also, the character dynamics and relationship to each other is way too bare bones for me to care on an emotional level, so I honestly found myself feeling detached in certain pivotal scenarios. My final score for Evil Dead Burn ends up being 5.5 out of 10. This was an okay, one-time watch experience for me. If you're into the gore and a storyline that stoops into the C and D tier zone, then you might still enjoy your time here. I personally didn't find the gore and intense sequences enough to keep this cinematic package afloat. The lack of interesting characters, the weak story, and a premise filled with plot holes just didn't work for me by the time credits rolled. Anyways, thanks for checking this review out. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I shall see you on my next upload. Until then, stay safe out there, and peace.